It was the year 1880, a time when the Lakota people were facing great hardship. The once proud and powerful nation was now torn apart by war, disease, and hunger. The Great Sioux War had been raging for years, and the Lakota warriors who had once fought fiercely to protect their lands and way of life were now struggling to survive. The land that had once provided for them was no longer abundant. The buffalo herds were scattered, and many of their people had died from sickness or starvation. The struggle for survival was becoming unbearable. Among the warriors was a man who had seen too much pain in his short life. He had once been full of strength, standing tall among his people, a proud warrior who had fought many battles. But now, after countless losses, he was but a shadow of his former self. His name was Yaya, and his heart had been heavy ever since the death of his wife and child. Yaya had been away from the village when illness struck. He had been hunting with other warriors when the sickness swept through the camp. His wife, Ziza, had been taken by the fever that killed so many, and his infant son, Yaya's Joy, had also succumbed to the illness. By the time Yaya returned, he was too late. He found his home empty, the only trace of life being the small cradle that had once held his son. The pain of losing his family was unbearable. Yaya had always been a warrior, someone who stood strong in the face of danger, but this loss left him weak. His soul was wounded, and he found himself wandering the plains, unsure of what to do next. His heart ached every day, and his thoughts constantly drifted back to the memories of his wife and child. He could no longer bring them back, and the silence in his heart was louder than any battle cry. For days, Yaya roamed aimlessly, trying to escape his grief, but it followed him like a shadow. One evening, as the sun set behind the distant hills, he found himself near the edge of a small village. He could see the smoke rising from the campfires, the soft murmur of voices in the distance. It was here that he would encounter someone who would change his life forever. Her name was Wiyayasi, and she too had lost much. She had been a young woman, married to a brave warrior named Wakangtanka. Like so many others, Wakangtanka had fallen in battle. The young widow had been left alone, her heart shattered from the pain of losing her husband, who had been her world. She had lived alone for many moons, her grief a constant companion. Wiyayasi had heard of the warrior who wandered the plains, searching for a way to ease his pain. She had heard the stories of a man who had lost his family, whose heart was now empty and broken. Though she too was grieving, she knew what it was like to feel lost, to feel as though the world was nothing but darkness. And so, when she saw him from a distance, her heart went out to him. She waited for him to approach, her hands trembling as she prepared herself for the encounter. Wiyayasi had been through her own suffering, and she understood the pain of losing someone you loved more than life itself. She knew, too, that the road to healing was long and hard. When Wiyaya finally came closer, his eyes filled with sorrow, she could see the depth of his pain. There was no anger or rage in his heart, only an overwhelming sense of loss. He had nothing left to give, no one left to turn to. The widow stood before him, feeling an unspoken bond between them, as though their shared grief had somehow connected their souls. "Do you need something, warrior?" Wiyayasi asked softly, her voice quiet but kind. Wiyaya looked at her with tired eyes, unsure of how to speak. His heart was heavy with grief, and his mind was clouded with confusion. But when he spoke, his voice was filled with desperation. "I have nothing left. My child, he is dying," he said. "I have no milk to feed him. I cannot bear to see him suffer." The words fell from his lips as if they were the last remnants of his broken heart. He could barely speak the words without his voice cracking, the weight of his sorrow pulling him down. Wiyayasi could see the warrior's pain, and her heart broke for him. Without hesitation, Wiyayasi moved closer, her expression softening. She had known what it was like to lose a child. The empty space left by the absence of her husband had only been made more painful by the absence of the children she could never have. But here in this moment she saw a chance to help. The warrior's plea had touched her deeply, and she knew that the only way to heal was through giving, through sharing what little they had left. "I will feed your child," Wiyayasi said, her voice steady, filled with compassion. "I have no children now, but I can help you." Wiyaya's heart swelled with gratitude, his eyes welling with tears. The offer was a blessing he never expected, a gift that had come from the kindness of a stranger, someone who had suffered in ways he could never understand. He didn't know what to say. He only nodded, his hands trembling as he accepted her offer. And so, in that moment, the widow and the warrior shared a quiet bond, a bond that had been forged through their mutual grief and the shared desire to heal. The widow, Wiyayasi, had lost everything, just like Wiyaya, but she was still willing to give. In a world where death and sorrow were ever present, this small act of kindness would be the first step toward a new beginning. Little did either of them know that this encounter, this simple act of feeding a hungry child, would change both of their lives forever. In the face of all their suffering, they had found something new, a reason to live, a reason to hope. The sun was setting as Wiyaya and Wiyayasi sat together near the small campfire, the flickering light casting long shadows across the land. The sounds of the night, chirping crickets, the soft rustle of the wind filled the air. Yet, for all its peace, the stillness of the moment felt heavy. The weight of the warrior's grief hung in the air like a thick fog, and Wiyayasi could feel it in the silence between them. She had already offered her help, but she could see that Wiyaya was hesitant. His hands trembled slightly as he looked down at the ground, unsure of how to accept the kindness she had offered. His pride, like that of many warriors, made him reluctant to ask for help. Yet the desperation in his heart could no longer be ignored. His child, his only hope, his final tie to the world he once knew, was fading. If he did not act soon, the tiny spark of life within his son would be gone forever. Wiyayasi knew this. She had lost so much in her own life, her husband, her children, and she understood the deep emptiness that comes from watching someone you love slowly slip away. She could see the warrior's struggle, the inner battle between his pride and his love for his child. Wiyaya, she said softly, her voice warm with understanding. I know you are a strong warrior, but this is not about strength. It's about love. Your child needs you now, and you need help. The warrior looked up at her, his eyes filled with sorrow. There was a moment of silence as he tried to find the words. His throat felt tight and his heart was heavy with shame. He had always been the one to protect, to fight, to stand tall for his people. But now, in the face of his dying child, he felt helpless. He was no longer a warrior. He was just a father, broken and lost. I do not know what to do, Wiyaya confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. My child is weak. I cannot feed him. I cannot save him. Wiyayasi watched him carefully, her eyes filled with sympathy. She had seen men like him before. Warriors who carried their burdens in silence, who thought that asking for help was a sign of weakness. But she knew better. True strength, she believed, came from knowing when to ask for support, when to lean on others. It was not something to be ashamed of. Your child will survive if he is fed, Wiyayasi said gently. I have milk. I can give it to him. I will feed him. Wiyaya's eyes widened in surprise. He had expected help from the tribe, from a healer perhaps, but not from a woman he barely knew. He was taken aback by her willingness to help so freely and without hesitation. In that moment he felt a deep sense of gratitude mixed with a kind of disbelief. He had not expected anyone to show such kindness to him. But you do not have children anymore, he said, his voice uncertain. Wiyayasi nodded slowly, her face softening with the weight of her own memories. No, I do not have children, but I still have love to give. The love of a mother is not bound by blood alone. It is a gift, something that can be shared. Her words touched something deep inside him. He had lost so much, his family, his future, and the idea that someone could offer love without asking for anything in return felt like a small light in the darkness. His heart, which had been closed off for so long, began to open just a little. I will do it, Wiyaya said quietly, his voice filled with gratitude and a touch of relief. I will trust you. Wiyayasi smiled, her heart swelling with compassion. She could see the warrior's inner struggle, but she also saw the hope that was beginning to flicker in his eyes. She had made the right choice. She could help this man, and through him she could help his child. This small act of kindness, this simple offering of what she had, would be the beginning of something more, something that neither of them could yet understand. That night, under the blanket of stars, Wiyayasi cared for the dying child. She held him close, her hands gentle as she fed him what little milk she had left. The child's tiny body was weak, but with each drop he seemed to grow a little stronger. It was not a miracle, but it was a beginning, a sign that life still had some hope left in it. As the night wore on, the wind grew colder, but the warmth between them seemed to grow. Wiyaya sat beside her, his eyes fixed on the child in her arms. He felt something shift in his chest, something he had not felt in a long time. Hope. Over the next few days, Wiyayasi continued to care for the child, and with each passing hour, the baby grew stronger. His cries became louder, his body less fragile. The change was slow, but it was noticeable. Wiyaya watched in awe, his heart swelling with gratitude. The widow's milk had given his child a second chance, and that was something he could never repay. But Wiyayasi did not expect repayment. Her heart, too, was healing in this quiet act of kindness. She had given what she could, her milk, her care, her love, and in return she felt a deep sense of peace. Perhaps she could never replace her own lost children, but here in this moment she was a mother again, in a way that she hadn't been for so long. As the days turned into weeks, a bond began to form between the warrior, the widow, and the child. They were an unlikely family born of tragedy and loss, but in that bond they found something beautiful. Wiyaya's pride had been broken, but in its place he had found humility. He had been willing to ask for help, and through that he had received much more than he could have imagined. For Wiyayasi, the act of feeding the child had brought new purpose to her life. She had once believed that her days of nurturing were over, but in caring for the warrior's child she realized that love had no limits. It was not tied to blood or past sorrow. It was simply something that could be given freely, and in giving she had found healing for herself as well. And so the days passed, each one bringing them closer together. The warrior, the widow, and the child were not just survivors of their own personal tragedies. They were a new family, united by love and compassion. This part delves into the growing bond between Wiyaya, the widow Wiyayasi, and the child. It emphasizes the themes of love, compassion, and the importance of accepting help in times of hardship. It shows how the simple act of kindness can heal even the deepest wounds. Days turned into weeks, and in those weeks, Wiyaya and Wiyayasi began to build a life together, though neither of them had planned it. The bond they shared over the child's survival slowly grew into something deeper, more meaningful. The child, once weak and frail, had gained strength, and so had the hearts of the warrior and the widow. What had started as a desperate act of kindness had blossomed into an unspoken connection between the two, both of whom had lost so much but found solace in each other's company. Wiyayasi continued to feed the child, though it was not without its challenges. Her own body, having lost its ability to nurse for so long, had to adjust to the demands of caring for the child. She was not a young woman anymore, and the effort it took to produce enough milk was great. But she did not mind. Each time the child latched onto her, her heart swelled with a sense of love she had not felt in many years. She had been through grief and loss, but here, in this quiet act of caring, she found peace. Her sacrifice was not just for the child, it was for herself too. In nurturing this child, she was healing her own wounds, the ones that had been left by the deaths of her husband and children. Wiyaya watched her in awe. At first he had felt uncomfortable with the idea of his child being fed by another woman, but as the days went by, he saw the genuine love in her eyes when she cared for him. The widow was not just feeding his child, she was giving him something far more precious: hope. Wiyaya's heart had once been filled with anger, grief, and frustration, but now it was beginning to fill with something else. The love and care. Wiyayasi showed the child had begun to heal his soul little by little. Every day he could see the change in his son, and with it he could feel the change in himself. "Thank you," Wiyaya said one evening as they sat by the fire, the child sleeping peacefully in Wiyaya's arms. "I don't know how to repay you for all that you have done." Wiyayasi looked at him, her face soft but firm. "You do not need to repay me," she said. "This is not about repayment. It is about what is right. You needed help, and I gave it. I only ask that you remember this kindness, and when the time comes, offer it to someone else." Her words struck a chord in Wiyaya's heart. He had never thought about kindness in such a way. As a warrior, he had always been taught to take, to fight, to survive. But now he saw that survival was not just about taking from the world. It was about giving, about sharing, about being there for others when they needed it most. The days grew longer, and Wiyaya's child became stronger. His once delicate body had gained weight, and his cries were louder, more insistent. He was beginning to look like a healthy baby, the light returning to his eyes. Every time the child smiled, A joy filled Weeyaya's heart. He had watched this child struggle to survive, and now he saw the miracle of life unfolding before him. But with the child's recovery came a new challenge for Weeyaya. The more the child grew, the more she had to sacrifice. Her body, once full of strength and energy, now felt the toll of the effort. She had not expected to be in this position, caring for a child who was not her own, but she had never once regretted it. The milk she gave the child was not just nourishment for his body, it was a gift of life, of love. Yet each time the child nursed, she felt her own energy drain a little more. She had no husband to help her, no family to support her in this task. It was a burden she carried alone, though she never complained. Weeyaya noticed this, and one evening, as he watched her carefully, he felt a deep pang of guilt. He saw how tired she looked, how she sat with the child in her arms, her eyes weary but still full of care. He could no longer ignore the fact that the woman who had given so much of herself to save his child was now wearing herself thin. "Weeyaya," he said quietly one evening as they sat by the fire. "You are giving so much of yourself to my child, and I see how tired you are. I do not want you to wear yourself out. You have already done more than I could ever ask." She looked at him, the soft glow of the fire flickering in her eyes. "It is nothing," she said, though her voice was a little weaker than before. "A mother's sacrifice is what keeps life going. I do this because it is right, and I do it because I love him." "But you need rest," Weeyaya insisted. "You are giving everything you have, and I see it. Please let me help." Weeyaya shook her head. "There is no need to worry about me. I have cared for children before, and I will care for this one as well. This is my gift, my duty. You have done enough by being here, by caring for him as well. You have nothing to feel guilty about." But Weeyaya could not simply ignore her exhaustion. He had begun to understand the depth of her sacrifice, and it made him realize that he could not stand by and watch her give everything while asking for nothing in return. He made a vow to himself that from that day forward, he would be more than just a passive observer in this new family. He would work alongside Weeyaya to care for the child, to help her in any way he could. In the days that followed, Weeyaya took on more responsibility. He hunted for food, built the fires, and took on the tasks that would lighten Weeyaya's burden. He could not change what had happened in the past, but he could help her in the present. Each time the widow smiled at him with gratitude, he felt a warmth in his chest, a feeling of purpose that he had not known in years. The child, now healthy and strong, became the center of their lives. But it was not just the child who had changed. Both Weeyaya and Weeyaya had changed as well. They had come together out of tragedy, but they were now bound by something far more powerful: love and sacrifice. The warrior's heart had been healed, not by his victories on the battlefield, but by the quiet acts of kindness and sacrifice shown by the woman who had taken him in. He had learned that strength was not just in the ability to fight, but in the ability to love and care for others. And so, in that small camp on the edge of the plains, a new family was born. Not from blood, but from compassion, sacrifice, and love. It was a family made stronger not by the wounds they had suffered, but by the love they had found in each other. As the seasons changed, so did the lives of Weeyaya, and the child. The once barren and empty days were now filled with the sounds of life, the laughter of a child, the soft murmur of conversation, and the crackle of the campfire at night. The pain that had once defined their existence had begun to fade, replaced by something stronger, something that neither of them had expected: hope. Weeyaya watched the child grow stronger every day. His little hands grasped at everything around him, his tiny fingers now able to hold onto his father's finger with surprising strength. His eyes, once dull and lifeless, now sparkled with curiosity. Every day was a new discovery, a new joy. Weeyaya could hardly believe it. Just a few weeks ago, his son had been on the brink of death. Now he was thriving, a healthy and happy child. He turned to Weeyaya, who was sitting beside the fire, her eyes soft with love as she watched the child play. She had become a mother to him in every sense of the word, and Weaya knew that he owed her more than words could express. Her kindness and selflessness had not only saved his son, but had also given him a second chance at life. A chance he never thought he would have again, after the loss of his wife and child. "We are so lucky," Weaya said softly, breaking the silence between them. Weaya looked up at him, her face lined with both wisdom and kindness. "We are," she agreed, her voice gentle. "But luck is not what brought us here. It is love, Weaya. It is the love we share for this child and for each other. That is what has kept us going." Her words resonated deeply with Weaya. He had never considered love to be so powerful before. As a warrior, he had been taught to fight, to take, to protect. But in the quiet moments with Weaya and their child, he had learned that love was not about strength or power. It was about giving, about caring for others, even when it seemed like there was nothing left to give. Weaya realized that the love they had for each other, the love they shared for the child, had healed them in ways they could not have imagined. Each day, they worked together to care for the child. Weaya hunted for food, and Weaya made sure the camp was kept warm and comfortable. They had built a simple yet sturdy shelter where they could rest and gather strength. It was not much, but it was enough. They had everything they needed in each other. As the child grew, so did their bond. Weaya, once a man lost to his grief, now felt something he had never known before, a sense of purpose. One day, as they sat together near the fire, Weaya turned to the widow, his heart full of gratitude. "You have given everything for him," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "and I have done so little in return. I want to do more for you. I want to make sure you are never alone, that you never have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders again." Weaya smiled at him, her eyes warm with affection. "I have never been alone," she said quietly. "Not really. Not since I met you. You and this child, he is my family now. And you are my family too." Those simple words filled Weaya's heart with a deep sense of peace. He had feared that he would never know what it meant to have a family again. But now, with Weaya by his side, he realized that family was not defined by blood. Family was defined by love, by the people who chose to be there for you, who shared in your joys and sorrows, and who gave their hearts without hesitation. In the following weeks, their little family began to find a rhythm. The child grew bigger, his laughter filling the air as he learned to crawl, then stand, and finally take his first steps. Weaya's heart swelled with pride every time his son took a step, and he couldn't help but feel a sense of awe at the small miracle they had all witnessed. He would often look at Weaya and smile, knowing that they had both played a part in this miracle. But as the days passed, Weaya could see that Weaya was beginning to tire again. She had always been strong, but there were moments when the weight of everything she had given began to show. She would pause for a moment longer than usual, her hands resting at her sides, her eyes closing in quiet exhaustion. Weaya knew that it was not just the physical work that was taking its toll on her. It was the emotional weight of everything she had sacrificed. One evening, as the child slept soundly in his small cradle, Weaya took her hand in his. "You have given so much, Weaya," he said gently. "But it is time that I take on more. You have shown me what it means to love, to give without expecting anything in return. But now I want to show you that I can care for you too. You are not alone in this." Tears filled Weaya's eyes as she looked at him. "I have never felt alone," she whispered. "Not with you and the child. But you are right. You have carried the weight of this family with me, and now it is time for me to rest." From that day forward, Weaya made sure that Weaya had the time and space she needed to rest. He took on more of the work around the camp, hunting for food and building new shelters as the seasons changed. He made sure the fire was always burning bright, that there was always enough food for everyone. The widow's heart, which had once been heavy with grief, now felt lighter with each passing day. She saw the man who had once been so lost, so consumed with sorrow, transform into someone who was steady, someone who could be counted on. The bond between the two grew stronger each day. They were no longer just two people brought together by chance. They were partners, equals, a team. Together, they had rebuilt their lives from the ground up, and in doing so, they had built a new family. As the months went on, the child continued to grow, becoming a curious and lively young boy. His laughter was like music in the camp, and his energy was endless. Weaya and Weaya looked at him with pride, knowing that they had both played a part in his survival. his happiness, and his future. And though their lives had been touched by sorrow, they had found something more, something that had made the pain worth enduring: love. It had brought them together, it had healed their wounds, and it had created a new family that was stronger than any battle or hardship they had faced. Together, they were no longer just survivors. They were a family, bound not by blood but by the love and sacrifice they had shared. And in that love, they had found a future they never thought possible. The days continued to pass, and with each sunrise the little family that Weeyayasi and the child had formed grew stronger. The seasons shifted as the world around them changed, but within their small camp there was peace. There was no more talk of war or battle, no more fear of loss or grief. Instead, they found solace in each other's presence, in the life they were now building together. Vilyaya had become a man transformed. Once he had been a fierce warrior, driven only by the need to fight for his people, to avenge his losses. But now he was a father, a protector in a new way. His days of battle had ended, and he found fulfillment in the quiet, everyday moments with Weeyayasi and the child. He no longer fought to protect land or honor. He fought to protect his family. It was a different kind of strength, one that came from the heart rather than from the body. Each day he rose early to hunt for food, ensuring that they would never go hungry. His hands had once been stained with the blood of his enemies, but now they were used to build, to gather, and to care. He had found peace in the simplicity of life, in the quiet tasks that filled their days. Weeyayasi, too, had found a new sense of purpose. Her body, once worn by grief and the burdens of her past, had found strength in the love she now shared with Weeyaya and the child. Every time she cared for the child, every time she saw him laugh or take a step, her heart swelled with pride. She had become more than just a mother to him. She had become a protector, a guide, a teacher. The child, who had once been so fragile, was growing into a strong, joyful boy full of life and energy. And in caring for him, Weeyayasi had found a new joy, a new hope. The child, whose name they had decided to give him together, Weeyaya, after his father, had become the center of their world. His small hands, once too weak to grasp anything, were now strong enough to hold onto a stick as he played with the grass. His eyes, which had once been clouded with illness, were now full of curiosity and wonder. Every day there was something new for him to discover, and Weeyaya and Weeyayasi were there to witness every step. As he grew older, Weeyaya couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude for the woman who had given him back his son. He remembered the day he had walked into her life, desperate and broken, his heart full of fear and uncertainty. And now here they were, a family, strong and united. He had never expected his life to take this turn, but in this small family, he had found something he never thought he would have again: love, warmth, and the promise of a future. One afternoon, as the sun began to dip low in the sky, Weeyaya sat beside Weeyayasi, watching the child chase after the birds near the camp. The child's laughter filled the air, light and pure. Weeyaya felt his heart swell as he watched the boy play, knowing that it was because of Weeyayasi's kindness and sacrifice that he was alive today. Without her, none of this would have been possible. Without her, the child would have never survived, and he would still be lost in the darkness of grief. "I can never thank you enough," Weeyaya said quietly, his voice full of emotion. "You saved my son. You saved us both." Weeyayasi turned to look at him, her eyes soft but strong. "It was not just me," she replied. "You saved him too, Weeyaya. You gave him your love, your strength. We both gave him life." Weeyaya nodded, understanding now what she meant. It had been their shared love, their willingness to care for the child, that had saved him. It had not been just one person's sacrifice, it had been the combined effort of two people who had found a new family in each other. And now, that family was growing stronger every day. As the child grew, so did their sense of unity. They began to build something even more important than the shelter they had made for themselves. They began to build a future. The warrior, once so focused on fighting and surviving, now had a reason to live beyond the battles of his past. His purpose was clear now: to raise his son, to care for Weeyayasi, and to ensure that the family they had created would thrive. One evening, as the stars began to twinkle in the sky, Weeyaya sat beside Weeyayasi and watched the child sleep. The fire crackled softly beside them, and the quiet of the night was peaceful. Wee turned to her, his heart full of gratitude. You have given me a second chance, he said softly. When I thought I had lost everything, you showed me that there is still something worth living for. You gave me my son, and in doing so, you gave me back my life. Wee smiled and took his hand, her fingers warm against his. We gave each other a second chance, Wee, she said. We both found something worth living for in each other, and now we are building a future, a family together. For the first time in many years, Wee felt at peace. He no longer carried the weight of his past, the weight of his lost family on his shoulders. He had found something new, something that was born not from the wounds of war but from the love and sacrifice they had shared. He had found a family, a future, and a reason to live. And as he looked down at the child sleeping peacefully in his cradle, he knew that their story was just beginning. There would be challenges ahead, no doubt, but they would face them together. They had already overcome so much, and together, they were stronger than anything the world could throw at them. The warrior had found peace, not in the battles he had fought, but in the love he had found with Wee and their child. The widow, once broken by grief, had found healing in the care and love she gave to the child, and in return she had found a new purpose. And the child, whose life had once been on the brink of death, had become the symbol of hope, strength, and love for them all. Together, they were no longer just survivors, they were a family, bound by love and sacrifice, and the future was full of endless possibilities.